Welcome back to another episode of the Flying G Huddle, your inside look at Gladwin football. I'm Casey Campbell. I'm your host and pleased to be joined each and every week by Gladwin head football coach Marc Jarstfer. Hello, Coach. How are you?
Doing good. Fall is certainly here with the weather now.
Yeah. Obviously, took a loss on Friday night against Pontiac Notre Dame Prep. First loss after 20 straight wins in a row, including which also included a state championship run. But yeah, it was quite the game, and played a really good team.
Yeah, absolutely. They're as advertised. They're extremely fast. They're extremely well coached. Jacob Huddle, their quarterback, is the real deal. Zach Milanek is got speed. I think he might be the fastest kid in the state, according to what their coach talked about with how he finished at the state finals last year in track, and then the couple guys that were ahead of him graduated, and so when you put all that together, they're a really good football team. And so we were kind of tied early, 7-7. We had a good answer after they scored, and then from there they scored a few more times. Things started to snowball for us a little bit, and then it got out of hand towards the end. But overall, I think that's a really good football team. The reason that you put these types of games on the schedule is so that you can have some of your weaknesses exposed, and try to have an opportunity to clean them up before the playoffs come. And we talk to our kids about that as well. You don't want the first time that you figure out your weaknesses, to be in the playoffs in a win or go home type game. And so there's certainly plenty of things that we can take away from this game in the film to clean up. But like I said, that's why the games are on the schedule, and we feel good about having them on the schedule for that reason.
Yeah. So I know that just to kind of reflect on everything, and don't get me wrong, we'll go through the game as we always do. But just the run that you guys were on, and rose to state prominence, and doing all the things that you accomplished with this team, with last year's team, and the team before that. What was just like to just be on this thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of surreal, right? Like that's something that you don't ever think is gonna necessarily happen to like you or your team. You hear about other teams doing it and that sort of thing. But it's a lot of hard work from a lot of people, players, coaches, community administrators, like the whole nine yards, kind of all factored into the success that we had on that run. And it was cool to see it continue this year, through 6 games without a loss, just knowing that everybody was going to give us their best shot, and that they certainly did. And so to get to 20 wins straight is certainly a special thing. But as we've talked about in the past, at some point, someday a loss was going to come. There'd be positive things that you could take out of that, and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, of course. Well, all right, let's go through this game. Of course, in the first quarter, it was 7-0 as Jacob Tuttle took it in for a 9-yard run to make it 7-0 at the end of the first. A 4-yard run to tie it up at 7, and then then Notre Dame Prep came, then kind of started to pull away with 3 touchdowns. First one coming from a Tuttle pass to Billy Collins to make it 14-7. Zach Milanek scoring to make it 21-7. And then Joey DeCassis catching a pass from Tuttle to make it 28-7 at half. In the third quarter, Jacob Tuttle passed to Collins again to make it 35-7. And then, of course, Jacob ran it in to make it 42-7. And then Colin Whalen scored a touchdown to make it to 49-7. And then, of course, Gladwin got on the board with a 65-yard run to make it 49-14. Notre Dame Prep scored one more time in the fourth to make it 56-14, and then Gladwin scored again to close the game 56-21, and that would be your final. But there are obviously some takeaways that you can take from that game. What did you tell the kids after this one as we kind of prepare for the last two, because there are tougher opponents on the way?
Yeah, and we talked about it was obviously hectic. After the game, our band was performing their annual glow show, which was really cool to see. And so we had our kids, go watch and support our band and cheer them on, like the band does for us, essentially year round. And so that was cool to see. And so with it being dark and everything immediately after, the kids ran to the locker room after the glow show, and I was able to get in there for just a couple minutes before they departed for the night. And I talked about, much of the same stuff that you and I have already talked about so far in this show, in the fact that you put these games on the schedule for a reason, so you can challenge yourself. And you obviously hope to come out on the right side of them. But if you don't, or even if you do, there's going to be a lot more that you can learn from a game or an opponent of this caliber, rather than somebody that you're just running clocking. And so we go out, and our philosophy is anytime we have an opening on our schedule, we're looking to put the best opponents that are available on it for that reason. And so talking to the kids, we kind of said, like, hey, there's no reason to hang your head. We got beat by a good football team. There's going to be learning things that we can take away from that. But there were no championships won last night. There were, none of that kind of stuff. And so, there's a lot of learning moments that can happen from it. But going forward, we have, two options. We can either hang our heads and say we're not as good as we thought, or we can learn from it and get better and give ourselves a good shot to be successful down the stretch of our remaining regular season games and into the playoffs.
Yeah. All right, we'll obviously preview this week's game coming up later on in the show, but regardless of win or loss, there was still some good performances out there, and that's where time to award your weekly MVPs of the game.
Yeah, and so offensively, this week's MVP is going to be Trace Corlew. His stat line was 9 carries, 61 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns with 2 receptions and an additional 21 yards. And so it was good to see him back out there. The last 2 weeks he's been banged up and sidelined and that sort of thing. And so just getting him back out on the field, obviously, adds a spark to our offense. And it was really good to see him have the success that we're accustomed to seeing him have when he's on the field. He's definitely a really special player for us. And so defensively, our MVP this week is Hunter McDowell. With all of the things that didn't go our way, when we were on defense, one of the bright spots was our ability to take care of the run in the middle. I don't know that they had more than 5 yards rushing between the tackles, but a big reason for that is our defensive line, and Hunter McDowell is a guy that is kind of a leader in that area and does a really nice job for us. And so he's our defensive MVP. He ended up with 2 tackles. And then our special teams MVP is Trayton Siegert. He was 3 for 3 on his extra points, and he had 2 punts with a 33-yard average. And so, that was able to get us out of some spots in our own end and give us a little bit better field position to work with defensively. And so that's why he's our special teams MVP this week.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's also do a JV team update. How are they doing? Last time we talked.
Yeah, and so our JV team is now 2-4. They were off this last week, and so when we put this Notre Dame Prep game on the schedule for the last 2 years, we didn't do the deal with the JV just because there's so much travel involved with that, and it didn't make a lot of sense in that regard. And so last year we were fortunate enough to have a local area team have a cancellation and an open week the same week as us, and so we were able to fill that last year. This year, there was no real available local games, and so we had an off week for our JV team. But, overall, like we've talked about in the past, our main goal for them is to develop, start to understand our system and learn our expectations, in the classroom, in the community, and that kind of stuff. And so a lot of that stuff has been taking place this year. And there's a decent amount of bright spots in that team, and that we're going to be looking forward to helping us over the next few years. And so they got 2 games left to finish out the season and try to get back to 500. But as we've talked about again, in the past, at that level, winning isn't everything, and there's a lot bigger things that we're concerned about there. And so they're doing a nice job to this point, and we're excited to kind of see how the rest of the season pans out and what the future holds for a lot of the young guys on that team.
All right. Well, it's time for another one of the best parts of the show, is where you get to talk about another staff member on the team. I know you've gotten a chance to profile a lot of them. Who are you going to talk about this week?
This week I'll bring up Eric Morgan. He's our special teams coordinator, and he works with our defensive line and running backs as well. And so he kind of is all over the place as far as responsibilities. He is one of the longest tenured, maybe probably the longest tenured, staff member for Gladwin High School in our program right now. And so he's, seen the ups and downs and been through a lot of different coaching turnover and those sorts of things. But the biggest thing that I would say about him is he's the most reliable, genuine, guy that we have on our staff. He's somebody that's very morally sound. I think it was just last year, I nominated him for one of the assistant coaches of the year award within our association, and he received that. And so just an overall great dude, and does a really good job for us. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that, with him handling the special teams, our run last year to the finals wouldn't have been possible without excellent special teams plays. And you think, really did the last 2 games in that Grand Rapids Catholic Central game. We had 2 kick return touchdowns, for scores, obviously. And then we had a timely fake punt execution inside our own 20 or 30 yard line before the half. And so, those played key factors in that CC game and allowed us to get to the finals. And then, obviously it's well documented history with what our special teams was able to do in kicking the game-winning field goal to clinch our first ever state title. And so he just does a really, really good job with special teams. Our defensive line is definitely better because of him. And then same would be true with our running backs. So we're happy to have him aboard.
Absolutely. Now it's time to there's also a lot of other programs around. It's not just football, but a lot of other programs in Gladwin are doing pretty well as well.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a Flying G. I've said that a lot over the last couple of years, and they asked me to give a motivational and inspirational talk, at our pep assembly yesterday, which I laugh every time I'm listed for that because I'm not much of a motivational guy. But I spent a majority of the time talking about just that, how it's such a great time to be a Flying G right now. Our soccer team is undefeated in league play right now, and actually on Monday, tomorrow, they're competing for a conference championship in soccer. Our girls volleyball team is undefeated in conference play, and they're looking to repeat as JPC champions. Our girls cross country team is currently second, and they have a shot at winning the JPC title this year as well. And then our boys cross country team is undefeated as well, and looking for their own three-peat. And then obviously football has clinched its share of a third straight title. And so when you look at fall sports, this year and over the last couple of years, we've been really fortunate. We have a lot of good coaches in Gladwin. We have good kids that are dedicated, and it really is a good time to be a Flying G.
Absolutely. And obviously, we'll profile a lot of those programs as the months go on. Of course, we also have we'll also talk about a little bit about the winter sports, and then we'll also talk about the spring sports as well. So some more content coming along the way. But you mentioned clinching a share of it. You could and of course the conference play wraps up this week. Hard to believe it's already week 8 of the season. Beaverton comes to town, but of course a lot of people want to talk about bouncing back this week. What's that going to be like heading into week 8, trying to get back on the board?
Yeah, and so this is a huge rivalry game for us. I think it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, rivalries in the state. We play for a stuffed Boston Terrier dog on wheels named Butch. I believe the first mention that we could find in the newspapers of that trophy being played for was 1933. And so, that's going on 90 years now of playing for Butch. It's a football and basketball trophy for the boys teams. And so, right now, Butch resides in Gladwin, and we're going to try to keep him there, obviously. But it's not going to be just a light, easy game either by any means. Coach Aaron Sizer for Beaverton does a phenomenal job there. They don't really have the enrollment numbers that a lot of other programs in our league do. They're around 280 if I remember right. But he's got them off to a 5-2 start, and they were 2 or 3 points away from having that at 6-1. And so he does a really good job getting them prepared week in and week out. And with this being an opportunity for them to have a chance to also clinch a share of the JPC title with a win this week, we know for sure we're going to get their best shot. Right now we're the only unbeaten team in the league. Claire has 1 loss in league, and so does Beaverton. And so, if they were able to pull off the win this week, then it would be a 3-way split. And so, our guys are going to definitely understand the gravity of that and know that they're going to be coming to play. And we'll do our best to get them prepared with a good game plan, and they'll buy in. And I'm sure it'll be a heck of a game this Friday.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Flying G Huddle. Thank you so much for watching. Tune in next week where we'll recap the Beaverton game, and then we'll preview week 9 against Frankenmuth, the rematch of the D5 state title game in Gladwin. So that should be fun. All right. For Coach Jarstfer, I'm Casey Campbell. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.